Hi, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google Switzerland, and I'm here to help answer your Webmaster web search related questions. Looks like a lot of people are in here already. So to start off with, do any of you want to jump in and ask the first question?
John, can I ask a question about secure and sitemaps?
Sure.
Because we very recently, as most people have, moved to all secure. And we did that by, I don't know if you remember last week, I mentioned forcing 301ing to secure rather than just having the option. So we did that within the sitemap as well. And I think we did it wrongly because we suddenly were throwing errors from Webmaster Tools saying you've submitted 1,500 URLs and only 12 have been indexed. I think because the sitemap immediately also 301 over to from non-secure to secure, and so as soon as the bot got to the sitemap, it couldn't find any URLs for the site it was supposed to be indexing. So should each, so the normal site should have a normal sitemap, and the secure site should have a normal sitemap, and just let Google do its thing and index both, and then decide, and then 301 at a page level. Is that right?
Yeah. So you basically 301 redirect all of your old pages to the secure ones. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
We also did it at the sitemap, so Webmaster Tools for the normal one started to have a bit of a fit and say I can't find anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's an option of temporarily submitting the old URLs in a sitemap file so that we can crawl those a little bit faster. What you could do there is say that you change these old URLs, set the last modification date for those. We'll go and crawl those URLs, see the redirect to the secure version, and follow that. Within sitemaps, it's likely you'll see some kind of a warning there saying you're submitting URLs that are actually redirecting, something like that.
Yeah.
And that's completely fine. That's something you know you're doing this. It's something you're kind of doing on purpose so that those redirects are found and followed. So that's completely fine. It would be a little bit different if you submitted those URLs and you expected the insecure versions to show up in the index because you submitted them in the sitemap, then that warning would be relevant. But if you're moving from one version of a site to another version, then that warning essentially just tells you that they're being processed normally.
Right. And having two sitemaps, one fully secure, one fully not, that also is fine because it'll
That's fine.
both, and Google will then choose which one.
Yeah, that's fine. I think in the long run you'd want to focus on just the version that you want to keep in your database. But in the short term, especially if you're doing a site move like this, that's completely fine. So that's completely fine. It would be a little bit different if you submitted those URLs and you expected
I didn't get the last bit. Someone's got their microphone on.
So in the long run, you'd want to just submit the final URLs, so the secure version where you have your content in there.
Right.
But,
okay, so give it 2 or 3 weeks to let that all fully re-index on secure.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch Webmaster Tools and see what happens. Okay.
That should work, yeah.
John, can I ask a couple of questions?
Hi, John.
Sure, go for it.
I don't know if you remember, we talked a couple of weeks ago. I took a client about more than a year and a half ago, and despite a lot of efforts, I haven't managed to move him through the results to get more organic search traffic. And I was assuming he was penalized of some sort of factor. I don't know if you managed to get a look at it. I left you a link.
If you can drop the URL in the chat, I can double check.
I sent you a private message with a Webmaster forums thread. I talked with a few people there, but we really haven't managed to reach a good conclusion. Yeah, maybe you can help me with that. And the second question would be actually related to this one. Is there any possibility in the future on Webmaster Tools to show some information regarding algorithmic penalties such as Panda or Penguin? I assume you haven't done so far because maybe if you do it, you would have to show what exactly you consider low quality links and things like that. But I guess it will help us as SEOs. Even a small notification like, we noticed an increasing amount of low quality links to your website. Please check our guidelines and something like that without actually giving examples. That would also actually help webmasters know that somebody is doing a bad job on their team, and that will help them maybe research more into it and find out more about what the quality guidelines are. And also, I actually will help also SEOs when, for example, I took some new clients and they paid for a year with an ex-SEO firm that has brought them a lot of black hat links, directories, low quality links. And they were very skeptical in removing those links, like disavowing them, for example, or actually removing them because they paid for it. And it's just my word against the other SEO team's words. So they were not convinced that they should remove those links without any proof that their site may be affected by those links negatively. So even a small notification helps by just saying that, you don't even have to tell them they're penalized. Just say that there are a bunch of low quality links you maybe want to take a look at.
Yeah,
that's more of a suggestion than a question.
A tricky topic because I mean we bring this up with the engineering teams regularly to see what we can do to bring a little bit more of that algorithmic information into Webmaster Tools so that webmasters have a little bit more insight into that as well. The main problem is really that our algorithms aren't really made for showing information to the webmaster. They're made to kind of optimize our search results so that the good results bubble up. And because of that, it's something that we can't really bring that information one-to-one in Webmaster Tools because it would be more confusing to the webmaster. So sometimes, for example, when we recognize that a site is ranking, let's say, for the wrong terms, it's ranking really well for this term, but not for this other term that we think it's more relevant. One of our algorithms might step in and say, well, your site isn't so relevant for this here, but it is relevant for this one here. And if we were to kind of show that to the webmaster and say, we think your site is low quality because it doesn't match what it was ranking for, what we were showing in the search results, then the webmaster might think, oh, well, this is something they have to fix. But from our point of view, it's just moving things to the right queries and not necessarily saying this is something that the webmaster is doing wrong. It's something we were doing wrong, our algorithms in the past, and this algorithm is kind of fixing that. So it's really tricky. I understand with links specifically, it's perhaps a little bit easier, but even there, it's sometimes really hard to algorithmically bring this information out. Because even when we do this manually from the web spam team, when we send example links to sites that were manually flagged for having web spam issues like that, we have enough problems there finding really good example links too. So I'd be kind of worried if we did this completely algorithmic and just tell the webmaster, oh, you did some spam, you should clean that up. And the algorithms are maybe picking something up that isn't really that critical or isn't really that problematic, or is something a competitor put up or an ex-SEO put up that we're ignoring already. It's not something that they really have to worry about. So it's, on the one hand, I'd love to put more of this information into Webmaster Tools, but on the other hand, we really need to make sure that it's really, really actionable for the webmaster and really useful, not just exposing some internal details that don't really have that much sense for the webmaster.
Right, but could you do it like since Penguin is being refreshed not so often, so it's not like daily or something like that. it's every few months, maybe once the penguin refresh on the day with a algorithm refresh, you could just trigger some sort of message or something like that.
It's really hard. Yeah, I mean, this is something we do bring up with the engineering teams regularly, because we know that when we look into our internal tools, we sometimes have information that would be really useful for the webmaster. And if the webmaster wants to fix the problem, we should help them fix the problem as much as possible. I think on the one hand, we'd love to do that. On the other hand, it's not that trivial. So it's not something that I would imagine you'd find in Webmaster Tools in the next month or so. But I wouldn't be surprised if it showed up, I don't know, I'm making a big guess, maybe a year or something like that. I think we'd love to bring more of that information into Webmaster Tools. But at the moment, especially with Webmaster Tools, the priorities are more on the really hardcore technical issues that you're doing wrong. So if you have a site set up that's completely wrong for mobile, that's something that's very black and white. We can test it. The webmaster can fix it. It's done. And all of these kind of gray areas where our algorithms are doing a little bit or finding some small problems, that's very tricky to communicate to the webmaster. But we hear it from you guys regularly. We do bring it up with the teams regularly, so it's not something I'd say is completely out of the question. It's just not trivial at all.
Yes, yes. This is, as I said, it was related to my previous client website in question, because some notification of this sort would at least help me know where to target my efforts going on, especially if there's a problem like this where nothing has worked so far, even though we have done a lot of effort. It would be very useful at least to know where to focus more than other areas or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi John, this is Pankaj.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question. Let's say we have a URL which is blocked by Robots.txt, and again it is being redirected 301 redirected to some other URL. So would it pass the page rank or not? So I just wanted to confirm.
It wouldn't pass any PageRank, because with the robots.txt we wouldn't see the redirect at all. So if it's blocked by robots.txt, then the URL that's blocked collects the PageRank, but the redirect doesn't forward any of that.
Okay. And is there any possibility if that particular URL, the destination URL, it is not being crawled from anywhere else, so it is also being blocked?
You could submit a sitemap. That might help us. But if this is the only link to that URL, then that seems like something where our algorithms might think maybe this is not such an important URL after all, and we might not index it that well. So I just make sure that it's easy for your users to recommend these URLs so that these links do show up more, and don't hide everything behind a robots.txt redirect. Make it so that people can just naturally link to your website.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. That we have a e-commerce site, and it got the data from the manufacturer directly in the databases. So, and when there's a possibility they will be selling the same database to other as well, because the product is the same. So the duplicacy is there. So when the site is so exhaustive that it is very difficult to clean up the entire data at a single stage. So if we have create a unique content at some stage of some part of the website, but again the percentage is very high of the duplicacy. So would it be a right choice to shut down some pages out of the website, so the percentage of overall duplicacy of the website can be balanced out? So in some sense we are not eradicating entire duplicacy but balancing out. So keyword ranking would be affected in that front as well.
So I think first we don't penalize a website for duplicate content. So just because you use your manufacturer descriptions doesn't mean that we'll penalize your website. What will happen is when someone searches for those individual pages or that piece of content, we'll try to show something that's relevant there. So that might be your page, that might be the manufacturer's original page, it might be someone else who's selling the same product. It's really hard to say. But essentially, it's not something where we would penalize your site for having that, so I wouldn't say you would need to remove it completely. But if you feel that this is lower quality content because it's just the same as everyone else has, putting a no index on there is a good idea so that the content remains within your website. Users can still find it by navigating through your website, but it's removed from the search results. So that might be a possibility there. But otherwise, I just try to, where you can, make sure you have your unique content, your unique value that you're adding to this content, which might be if you're selling these products locally, then maybe your address is something that's relevant there. So people are searching for the product and in your city name, so that would be a good match. But if you're just selling this online and everyone else is selling it online in the same way, then that's kind of hard to provide that extra value. But be creative. Maybe there's something that you can do there that really provides a lot of extra value that others don't have.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right, John.
Yes.
Just quickly on that one, with regards to obviously unique content on e-commerce websites, we've got a couple of sites where, say for instance, they're both selling, I don't know, for example, bottles of Coke. One's 500 ml, one's 1 litre. Obviously, the sort of thing that the content on them pages is going to be very similar, apart from the actual size of quantity of the actual Coke that's being sold. How would you kind of go about displaying that sort of thing on the website?
I mean, it depends a bit on your website and how far you want to go. There are, I guess, two main options where you could say, YouTube has a weird echo. There are essentially two main options that you can do there. One is just to leave these different product variations on your website under individual URLs so that they're available on your website. If someone is searching specifically for that variation, then they'll be able to find it in search. And the downside there is we have to crawl a lot of pages. And if you have variations and variations, like let's say you have T-shirts in different colors and in different sizes, and for male and for female, then that's a lot of different variations that we have to crawl and index separately. You could do that if you wanted to. So if someone is searching for a blue T-shirt for this size, this type, then you'd have a perfect page for that. Another idea could be to kind of fold those different variations into a single URL, where you say this is the main product URL, and all of these options are essentially variations that I have available on this page, but this page is about this product in general. The advantage of doing that is that you have a much stronger individual product page because you have one of these. You don't kind of spread yourself thin within your website with all of these different pages. And it's something that will probably rank a little bit better for the more general queries where someone is searching for a T-shirt with maybe a specific design on it, but they don't care about the color or the size, or they'll pick the color or the size when they come to your site. So those are essentially the two main options there. It's not that we'd say one is correct and the other one is not correct. You kind of have to work out how it works for your website. If you have T-shirts that are in different sizes, then probably those variations aren't so relevant that it makes sense to make individual pages for that. But if you have different patterns on these T-shirts, maybe it makes sense to have individual pages for each of these patterns. So that's something you kind of have to look at the products that you're selling and consider, is this specific variation relevant and unique enough that I want to have it indexed separately, or is this just a part of a more general product that I want to have visible in search, and the user will pick the right variation that they want when they come to my site.
Perfect, thank you.
John, related to that question, I usually advocate for the second option of going for a single URL where the variations of the product are available as attributes, filters, something like that. Would it be useful to include for example, the t-shirt size in the meta description, or like available sizes, S and something like that. So we could also be able to rank better for people who search for that t-shirt size M or something like that.
We don't use the meta description for ranking. We do show that in the snippet, but it's not something we use for ranking. So from that point of view, it wouldn't help for your ranking, but it might make the snippet a little bit easier to understand. So maybe you could do that like that.
So we do not take actual text from the meta description to use it for at least consider it like text on the page.
No, if it's just the meta description tag, we don't use that for ranking. So we use that for the snippet, but we wouldn't use that for ranking the page.
Oh, okay.
I have a question about the href language tag.
Okay.
And we have a big site with about apps, and it's in 3 languages. It's in English, in German, and French. And it was first indexed without any of these alternate href tags. And all of the, if you search in Germany, you see the English versions and vice versa. It's really crazy. So we implemented the tag afterwards. It's 4 weeks ago. But still, it's really crazy, as in that if you search in Germany, you find the English results, and if you find you search in the US, you find the German results. How long should we be patient, or should my customer be patient until those href language tags really show effect?
On the one hand, we need to recrawl both of those variations.
Yes, all of them, yes.
So that takes a bit of time, depending on the size of the website and the
It's about 3 million pages.
Yeah, and depending, I guess, on how much we crawl, which pages you're seeing in the search results, if they're like the important pages in the search results, then that's something we'd probably crawl and index a lot faster. If they're very random pages on the website, then maybe we'll recrawl them every couple of months. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But in general, I imagine you should see some kind of visible results after 4 weeks. That's
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Is there any way to speed it up? And is it better to put it in the code or in the XML sitemap?
Both options work. So they work at the same speed. We have to recrawl those pages even if the hreflang is in the sitemap. What you can do to speed that up is submit a sitemap file with a new last modification date for those URLs.
Okay.
That's something we could process. With a site that size, I don't think there's any magic bullet that you can use to speed everything up. But if you still see these problems after, I guess, like 4 or 5 weeks, then that's something we definitely want to see those examples so that we can figure out what we need to do better on our side. It sounds like you've waited a reasonable time to let that get updated, so it almost feels like something on our side is sticking to something that's wrong.
In the Webmaster tool, where it should show that these tags are noticed, in the English side we see 600,000 of them, and in the German version only 6,000 of millions. So there is something stuck there. You know, and another question related to that is, should we help the customer, the user out there, if they access the site? Should we redirect them based on their IP address in addition to that href language tag? Would that help? I mean, then the customer sees the correct version right away, and we would not redirect the Google bot, of course, because that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, that's the main problem. That we would almost see that as cloaking.
Yes, of course.
If you're redirecting users in the US but not Googlebot when it crawls from the US, then that would be kind of like cloaking.
Sort of, but it would help the customer in this sense, right? I mean, would if there's the it looks like cloaking, yes, but then if a quality rater looks at it, they would see that we don't do anything bad, but we only try to help the customer.
I think the bigger problem from our side, what we'd see there is that it's confusing to Googlebot. When we don't really know what exactly is happening when someone is going to a page, that makes it really hard for us to understand how we should be treating this page. What we generally recommend is showing a banner on top, so that's something that the customer can see. They can make a choice on that. Because sometimes people in the US are searching in German and they want to find a German page, but of course if they're searching in English, then finding the English page makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So you're saying it's best if we know they're coming from the US, put up a banner and say, hey, why don't you try the English version of this? You're based in the US and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then set a cookie so they only come to the site correctly.
That's fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And is this, I had some customers with banks and they needed to really, the US customers must only see the US version and vice versa. In that case, I mean, it is sort of looking like cloaking, but is there any way to notice Google that there is a legal responsibility of the bank to do that?
Not really. It might be interesting to have some of those sample URLs if you have some that you can share with me.
Yeah.
Because I know that the team is currently looking into what we can do with those kind of sites that must show something different to users in different countries. And that would be useful to kind of think about what we can do there to improve that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, let's go through some of the submitted questions because people seem to have voted on them, and it would be a shame to let them go. Let's see, what do we have here? We've been updating our content throughout our e-commerce site and placing some of the text behind the Read More button for users in Google to see. Could a Read More button be devaluing our content we have worked so hard to produce? To some extent, we do recognize that content is hidden and we try to ignore it. So if this is something where you're putting a lot of unique value behind these Read More buttons, it's possible that our algorithms are thinking, oh, this looks like it's hidden, it's probably not that important. So I'd really recommend, as much as possible, putting the real content directly visible on the page. And if you have kind of auxiliary content or additional value that you're providing there, using Read More or using kind of a tabbed layout, something like that, is absolutely fine. But the primary content that you really want to rank for should be visible directly. I noticed Google patented the ability to use implied links as a ranking factor, which I'm guessing our brand mentioned. Is this currently being used as a ranking factor? Or will it be used in the near future? If so, when will it be used? That's a lot of questions. So in general, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of work to find out what might work, what kind of algorithms might work, what kind of algorithms are kind of need to follow up on, and we might patent some of those, or we might publish research papers on those. That doesn't necessarily mean we use them at the moment for ranking. And that doesn't mean that we'll use them in the future for ranking. So that's something where I wouldn't assume that just because there's a research paper out there or a patent out there that this is something you guys need to focus on. And similarly, if this is something that we're going to be putting into use in the future, in general, we're not going to pre-announce that. And we might not even announce it afterwards if we're using a very specific type of algorithm. So that's not something I'd really be able to help you with. But at the same time, it's not something where I spend too much energy on and say, oh, this really obscure patent from Google. If Google were to do this, then I'd have to add, I don't know, $5 to my pages, and I could rank all the time. That's probably not going to happen that easily. So we do have a lot of really smart people doing cool stuff here, but just because it's published doesn't mean that it's live or going to be live soon. When moving Penguin Hit site to HTTPS, does the disavow file have to start from scratch again to no-follow disavow domains? The disavow file is added to HTTP and HTTPS, but the HTTP file is a year old, whereas the HTTPS one is just a few weeks old. So if you're moving from one site to another, if that's across domains or from www, non-www, or from HTTP to HTTPS, I just also upload a new the same disavow file for both of those versions so that we kind of have that connection there. but it doesn't mean that it starts over. So essentially what happens here is on a per URL basis, we'll crawl your site, we'll see the 301 redirect, we'll switch to the other URL in our index, but we'll kind of try to forward as many of those signals as we can to that new URL. And those signals include all of those URLs that were disavowed, that we've crawled in the meantime, that we're treating in kind of like no-follow links now. So all of those signals get forwarded to those new URLs. You don't start over from scratch. It's not that you'd have a big disadvantage from moving from one version of a URL to another one. So all of that does get forwarded as much as possible.
Can I ask a question, John?
If a website is stuck in limbo due to a penguin penalty from past SEO work, is it likely, if we have disavowed all questionable backlinks and removed whatever we can, with a top quality site that a penguin refresh, we can see a boost again in Google? Yes. I mean, this is a very theoretical question where you're essentially saying you've turned your site around and made it the best of its kind, and with an algorithm refresh, we'll try to take that into account as much as possible. So if you've really cleaned up all of the web spam issues associated with your site, then the web spam algorithm will say, well, this is fine the next time it runs. So from that point of view, that's definitely possible. It's certainly not the case that once an algorithm thinks your site is bad, that it'll be bad forever and that you'll be stuck forever. So that's something that shouldn't be happening there. And in some cases where it looks like something is being stuck forever, kind of contacting us so that we can go to the engineers and ask about the details there, that's always useful. But in general cases like this where you've seen a lot of web spam on your site, you've cleaned all of that up, and you're just waiting for a web spam algorithm to update again, that's completely normal, and you almost certainly see a change after that algorithm runs again, after the data is refreshed, or the algorithm is updated.
John, can I just ask a question back on the previous question?
Sure.
Where they asked when you move the site, and you move the disavow file, etc. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I asked about when you 301, you said that some of the authorities passed, but not all of it, but we couldn't quite get to the bottom of why. Does that mean then that if you move site and you move everything, when you're 301ing, you get, in theory, you get, let's say 80% of the ranking or whatever it is follows you, but all of the penalty follows you? Or do you apply the same kind of percentage of lost ranking as lost penalty? So, because essentially you'll just end up worse off if you get some of the ranking, but all of the penalty.
I imagine, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, yeah. So, I don't know. It's very theoretical. Let's put it that way. I think.
But in kind of our situation, it's not. It's financial. It's not theoretical at all. We haven't done it. I'm just saying in real world scenarios where people have their own businesses and they're losing real money. It's not theoretical in any sense. It's a real decision that costs real people their jobs.
Yeah. So when it comes to algorithmic issues, that kind of dampening factor definitely happens there as well. So that's something where you'd also see the same kind of dampening with the forwarding. When it comes to manual actions, I believe those will just be passed on one-to-one because there's often no kind of like dampening available with manual actions. Either someone says your site is low quality, thin content, and it's removed from the index, or it's not removed from the index. There's no like, oh, your site is 10% removed from the index, that kind of thing. So that's something where, from a manual action point of view, that would be forwarded completely. But if there's anything,
you would be worse off.
Yeah, yeah. But I wouldn't assume that you could like chain, I don't know, 10 of these redirects after each other to kind of soften something up. But it's something that happens proportionally with all the rest. So it's not that one side goes a little bit down and the other side stays as bad, and you see the same problem.
It's more. I'm not ever suggesting that you should move site to avoid a penalty anyway, because you're not really fixing the underlying problem. It was more because of what's come up recently in terms of the secure. So you move everything to a secure site.
Yeah.
And you therefore, you're losing some of the ranking, but you're gaining some back with the secure, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
You're not, but any penalty that's following you is all following.
Yeah.
You could lose the secure, you'd be worse off, but you wouldn't know why unless you'd watched this discussion.
Yeah, yeah. That's not the case. So that's something where if you don't have a manual action and it's really purely algorithmic, then that kind of dampening happens regardless. So that's I'm pretty sure, like, if you just change from HTTP to HTTPS, that's even something that where we wouldn't have any kind of dampening there, because that's essentially just such a small variation there. That's something where we wouldn't say this is like a site move.
Right. Okay. Sorry, carry on.
Hi.
Okay. Let me just go through some more of these questions, and we'll have more time for questions from you guys afterwards. I noticed that to receive the search bar and the search results, you need to implement schema markup. Is schema markup something that Google is going to look at more over time? Yes, we are looking at schema.org markup more and more, and we're always looking at the kind of markup that's being used, and that helps us to decide which kind of markup we should also support. Is schema markup currently used as a ranking factor? Not in the sense that if you have schema.org markup, we'd rank your site better, but it definitely helps us to understand the content on your site a little bit better. So if you mark up the entities on your site and you clearly mark up like what you're talking about, then that makes it a lot easier for us to say, oh, this page is really about this topic because they confirmed this with the schema.org markup or with other kind of metadata markup on these pages, so that we can really be sure that this page is about this topic. But it's not the case that just adding random schema.org markup to a page makes us say, oh, it uses schema.org, it must be a better page than all of these other ones. Question about redirects. Could you clarify, confirm that with chained redirects, link equity is reduced at each jump? By how much is it reduced, and does it vary or remain consistent at each step? This is something, like I mentioned before, it's mostly a theoretical question in the sense that some part of the page rank is essentially dropped with these redirects. If you chain a lot of redirects, and some of that will be kind of reduced during those chains. This is one of those reasons why we also recommend going out and contacting the sites that are linking to your pages when you do a site move, so that those links go directly to your new pages, and essentially you don't have to worry about that drop. So this is something where if you kind of had access to a very granular PageRank meter that was extremely live, then that's something where you might see a tiny drop there. But in practice, it's something where as long as you're not going overboard with the amount of redirects that you're chaining, you wouldn't really see any change in rankings there directly. Is the number of posts on blogs or social media like buzz a ranking factor? Is a big buzz better for Google? We do pick up content that's like changing on your site, and we try to show that in the search results. If it's relevant content that matches new or current activities, and that could help us to say, well, this page might be relevant for these kind of new and upcoming things. But it's not the case that we'd say, well, there's a lot of content that's coming in and out of these pages, therefore it must be good. So we really look at the content and try to figure out what we need to do with that content and try to react accordingly to that. So it's something where if you just add like RSS feeds to your pages where you're constantly updating the newest news from whatever on those pages, that doesn't necessarily mean that these pages are suddenly much more valuable for us or much more relevant for us in the search results. You're doing a lot of work to update these regularly. We're probably crawling them fairly quickly because we see a lot of changes. But just because we crawl them regularly doesn't mean that they're suddenly a lot better So I wouldn't focus just on like the quantity of buzz or the quantity of blog posts that you put out, but really make sure that the quality is the main thing, and the quality and the relevance of what you're putting out there matches what you're trying to achieve. So it doesn't look like you're just like churning things out automatically, or that you have a squad of writers who are just like creating content like crazy. If that content isn't really relevant and useful, then that's not really going to help your site. So just because a lot of things are changing doesn't mean that it's better like that. I've seen in the past websites that are relatively new showing well in the search results for a short period and then dropping back. Do Google temporarily rank a website well to see how users interact with it and then adjust its ranking based on this interaction? This is something where I imagine a number of our algorithms try to find the right approach with new websites where we don't have a lot of signals. So especially if a website is really new and we don't have a lot of information on how useful this website is, how high quality this website might be, then our algorithms are going to make some estimations first based on what they've seen so far. And based on that, they might show it in the search results. And then over time, as we gather this data, then those algorithms are going to adjust their estimations, and that might be they'll adjust them up because they think, oh, well, this website is actually a lot better than we assumed. It might be that they adjust them down and say, well, we thought this was going to be great, but whoever created this website didn't keep up, and it's kind of not as great as we thought, actually. So that's something where our algorithms, when they have to work with estimations, might make estimations on the high side, might make estimations a little bit on the low side, and it just takes a while for things to kind of shake down and land at a reasonable level where we say, all of the signals that we know about this website have been confirmed, and we really trust that this is the right place to show this website in the search results.
Hi, John. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, a question is being posed by the Sunny in our group chat. So I just got the information on that as well. I want that information again. So in one post, when Panda 4.0 came, so a post came from the webmaster about the good quality sites, and wherein they were referring that some authorship is also means a way to measure how quality a content could be. And now the authorship is being removed entirely from the search results. So does this mean that the quality of content means authorship is being ignoring by the Google to map or what we call it, measure the quality of a content?
We actually never use authorship for ranking directly, so that's something where I imagine there's some misconceptions around there around like authorship being used for Panda, for example, and that's something we never really did. We use authorship for the in-depth article in the web search, but at the moment we don't use authorship at all. So that's something where if you feel that your site has low quality content, just adding the authorship information wouldn't have changed the low quality content. So that's something where you really have to take a step back and think about your website overall.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. My site is in limbo, affected by the Penguin update, removed and disavowed all known unnatural links. I don't know if I can now move forward with the site for fear that work will be in vain due to ongoing penalty, how to know if just the page rank is reduced, or if the site has an algorithmic penalty. So if the page rank was reduced, that's essentially something that would have been done on a manual level. That's something that would have been a manual action and visible in Webmaster Tools. So that's something where if you see this in Webmaster Tools, you kind of know, okay, my site has a lot of unnatural links, therefore the web spam team has decided to kind of reduce my page rank for that. The thing to keep in mind with PageRank in general is that it's something that we don't think is really an actionable metric. I believe we haven't updated it in over a year now, and I imagine it's something that probably won't be updated in the future anymore. So that's something where I wouldn't focus on PageRank. I'd kind of look at the rest of the situation with your website. If you see that your website is strongly affected by a web spam algorithm like Penguin, and you've really cleaned up all of those links, disavowed the ones that you can't remove, those kind of things, then generally it's a matter of waiting for that algorithm to update again. I know it's been a while now. I imagine this is something where you might see changes in the reasonably near future, but it's not something where I'd say this is going to happen today or tomorrow. I know the engineers are working on this, but I don't have any like hard dates where I can say on this date this algorithm is going to be updated again. Let's see. Does Google test algorithms like Penguin in a live environment before rolling them out? Could some webmasters have experienced changes attributed to Penguin 3 rolling out in the last few months? So yes, we do some live experiments with our algorithms. There's a really good video from Matt from, I think, like March or April this year, where he talks about how we test new algorithms. So primarily what we do with new algorithms is test them based on the known data that we have, the kind of the rated existing URLs that we have, and to see which queries the results kind of show better or higher rated results, and for which ones we show lower rated ones. Sometimes we'll also do a new batch of ratings where we'll say the search quality rater should rate the search results A and B and tell us which one is better, and kind of go through the individual URLs there and review them to see which one matches what the user is looking for, which one matches better kind of the information that the user might be interested in, might want to find there. So that's something that we do. And as a last step, almost, when we think our algorithms are really good, we'll run live experiments on them, and that we'll take maybe 1% of the traffic and say, okay, they'll go through this version of the algorithm, another percent will go through a different version of the algorithm, and we'll see how users react to those individual changes. And that's something that we do for ranking algorithms. That's something that we do for UI changes. We generally have, I imagine, way over 100 experiments running at any given time. So that's something where you almost always, when you do searches, you'll be in some kind of an experiment, and we'll be kind of double checking if we're doing things right or if we're doing things in a way that we could be doing better. And when we do these kind of A/B tests, sometimes that's something that people notice. Sometimes that's something Barry notices and writes about and does screenshots, those kind of things. Ranking experiments are obviously a little bit less visible. But we do run those all the time, and we do try to figure out which of our algorithms need to be tweaked and how we can best tweak them to make sure that they're really reflecting what users now want to find in search results, how they're searching, and all of that. But I'd really recommend checking out that video from Matt from earlier this year, because he covers that with a little bit more detail. Does Google need a 301 redirect forever for every page on a site when a URL structure changed multiple times over the years? Would Google pass ranking signals on to the newest generation, or would they revert to an older version if there's no 301? We generally wouldn't revert to an older version because we forward those signals to the newer ones, and all of the internal linking will also be reflected and pointing at the new ones. So if you've changed your site structure and you've changed internal links, then we'll probably try to follow those internal links as well and focus on the newer ones. Personally, I'd recommend making sure you have a 301 redirect in place for at least a half a year. If you can keep it there longer, I definitely do that. If you can track the usage of those redirects, like users actually following them, then you can probably make a little bit of a better decision there and say, well, nobody's looking at these URLs anymore, no user is looking at them, no search engine is crawling them anymore, therefore I can just turn them off and kind of simplify the HD access, those kind of things.
John, I have a question regarding to that. I've seen lately that 301 redirects are staying in the Google index for years. I've correctly redirected 301 sites, whole sites by 301 redirection, and they are still there really literally after 2 years. And I've seen that on several sites in the German Google index. And I see that Google is trying over and over again, I see that in the Webmaster Tools, to access those old URLs, and I just like to clean up the old index, but I see they just don't disappear. I see, is this a new thing? Before 301 redirects really were a very clean way to clear up the old sites, but now it looks like it really stays.
In general, we'll try to follow 301 redirects as much as possible and really focus on the new URL. What you will sometimes see is that we know that there are multiple URLs that essentially are equivalent and lead to the same content. And if you do something like a site query for a domain that has been redirecting for a while, you'll still see a lot of URLs there, just because we think that you're specifically looking for those URLs, and we know that we have some equivalent URLs that were also on those URLs, so we'll show them there. And what you'll see in general is if you look at the cache page, you'll find that the new URL is actually shown on top of the cache page, but you're kind of looking at the cache page of the old URL. So we'll have actually indexed everything under the new URLs, but we know that for those new URLs, there are also these old URLs, and they're equivalent. So if you explicitly look for those, we'll say, oh, well, you're looking for these, we'll show them to you.
I see, but why?
We sometimes see people searching, for example, for the old website. If they know that, I don't know, myOldDomain.de, and they search for that old domain, then we want to show them kind of what they're looking for. And that's something where what we're trying to do for the users confuses webmasters in the sense that if you do a site query, you kind of expect, well, those numbers will go to 0 as soon as everything is crawled. But from our point of view, we think, well, if you're explicitly looking for that, maybe we should show you something, even if we have everything moved over in the meantime.
So how do I know that everything has been crawled?
I would focus on Webmaster Tools, the indexed URL count in the sitemaps, for example.
Well, I don't see the old. There's no Webmaster Tool for the old site because that has been completely redirected.
Yeah.
I cannot verify the old site. And actually, I have a customer with hundreds of old domains, which we all have redirected with a lot of work, and they still appear in the Google index if we search for them explicitly, of course. And there's no way to check if we can, because the webmasters asked us, can we turn off those redirections now? Because it's a lot of work to keep them up, and I have to tell them, sorry, I just don't know. Google's trying to access those old URLs for ages, for 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that strange that I cannot tell Google, hey, this domain is really gone, and take it off, and I don't want to see it anymore, and I don't want any redirections there anymore?
Yeah,
wouldn't that make your work easier?
To some extent, yes. As long as nobody else takes that domain.
Yes, of course.
That's always the tricky part. If you say, I don't need this domain anymore, I'll let it expire, and someone else picks it up and puts a website on there.
Well, that's different because there would be new content there, and there would be no redirection there, or there would be new content there, but that would be my problem, really.
Yeah, but that's something where we'd have to crawl those again.
Yes, of course.
But I do agree that I've been seeing more of these questions as well around the web, where maybe we can do something better with those site queries and say, if we can recognize that these URLs have really moved, maybe we shouldn't be showing them in the site query either, and only if someone is explicitly looking for the name, maybe, but not in a site query. But I don't know how quickly we'll be able to make changes like that, and it depends a bit on what the search quality teams have been thinking about those site queries anyway. But I totally see how this makes diagnosing things a lot harder.
It does, yes. Okay. So it's not only me. That's the good part.
Yeah, definitely. It seems rich snippets are not displayed when I use schema.org markup with JSON-LD. Do you support schema.org with JSON-LD to show rich snippets? We only support JSON-LD for a very limited number of schema.org markups. I think that's only for events and for the new site link search box. So for the other types of rich snippet markup, we currently don't support JSON-LD. That might change over in the future as we kind of move our markup testing tools to JSON-LD as well. But at the moment, we don't support it for all different types. Let me see what kind of questions we have left. They're kind of higher voted. Will the Penguin 3.0 launch in 2014? My guess is yes, but as always, there are always things that can happen in between. I'm pretty confident that we'll have something in the reasonable future, but not today. So we'll definitely let you know when things are happening. From Webmaster Tools, I get crawl errors from our WordPress blog. I've checked them, but nothing. The crawl errors come from the tags that we have on the blog and are, for example, like this, a bunch of weird, I guess, Unicode characters. In general, if we can crawl those URLs, we'll try to crawl them if we find a link somewhere. And depending on what we find there, we might crawl them more frequently or less frequently. But in general, if this is just a URL that returns a 404, then we'll kind of slow down our crawling over time. And it's not something that would negatively affect your website. It's essentially just we found a link to those pages, and we think maybe we should check them out because we kind of like your website and would love to find more content on there. So we'll try those URLs. If they don't work, that's fine, but we'll let you know that we tried and we found an error in Webmaster Tools, just like you would find that error also in your log files. So it's not a sign that anything is broken or that you need to fix anything. It's essentially just us saying we tried this URL, it didn't work, and maybe that's fine. We have a site that we cleaned up that had a manual penalty. The traffic has significantly dropped since the reconsideration request was approved. We are earning links via content marketing, but things get worse, not better. What can we do to recover? So if the manual action has been resolved, that's essentially a good step, because that means, at least from a web spam point of view, the team, when they manually reviewed your site, didn't find what they found in the past. So that's a sign that you're going the right direction. If you're seeing kind of negative or no changes in the search results during that time, what's likely happening is that our algorithms are picking up other issues that maybe the web spam team isn't picking up on. That could be everything from the quality of your content. It could also be web spam issues. It could be keyword stuffing, the usual kind of issues where our algorithms might pick up on this, might respond accordingly, but the web spam team would say this is technically not web spam, so we're not going to flag it as a manual action. So what I'd recommend doing there is, first of all, making sure that the quality of your site overall is really the highest it can possibly be. So if you compare it to other sites that are kind of active in that area, that it's obviously clear that this is by far the best one of that kind. So that's essentially the first step I take there. Obviously, that's easier said than done. So there's a lot of work involved in that sometimes. If you're earning links via content marketing, I'm not really sure what you mean with that. That sounds a lot like you're doing guest blogging and just adding links to those guest blogs, which wouldn't necessarily be the best way to earn links, because essentially you're creating this content and you're trading this content for a link, which makes this link kind of an unnatural link. So that's not something where I'd say this is particularly a good thing. On the other hand, it might be that you mean something completely different with earning links via content marketing. Maybe you're creating great content on your website and people are referring to that and they think that's great, and that would generally be a good kind of link. But if you're placing these links into content and other people are publishing your content with your links, then that seems like something you'd want to double check, maybe with other people who have gone through this kind of process before, and to see that you're not doing anything that's causing more of a problem for your site than you think you're actually providing an advantage for.
John, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Okay, I have a question. Can Google read our server specifications and use this as a ranking factor?
So you mean from the certificates?
No. I mean, supposing that the server has a limited bandwidth, will that impact on our rankings? Because maybe the site will not support a large amount of traffic that we'll get with some of the keys.
No, that wouldn't be a problem. So the bandwidth for the server is mostly a technical problem for us. We might not be able to crawl the content as quickly. But if we can crawl the content, if we have an index, then we're not going to assume that the server can't handle.
But even the fact that the server is
Oops. You're muted.
yeah. Sorry. So even the fact that the server maybe is a very big one with very powerful, will not influence in our ranks.
No, that wouldn't matter. So the server speed is really primarily a problem for our crawling and indexing. And if you can index those, then that's fine. We don't make a judgment on how much traffic your site is able to handle.
I understand. Thank you very much.
All right. And with that, we're kind of over time. So thank you all for all of your questions. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And maybe we'll see you guys next Sure.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, John.
Bye.
All right, thanks.
Bye. Thank you.